Velthor heaved himself upward with all four arms, finally managing to throw Hajin off. The human hit the ground and rolled limply, his body barely responding anymore. Blood pooled beneath him, too much blood. His breathing was shallow and ragged. Several ribs were definitely broken now, maybe internal bleeding. His left arm wasn't working properly. The Vextar warrior stood, his chest heaving. For the first time in the fight, he looked disheveled. His armor was cracked in several places. His lower left arm hung at an awkward angle. His knee was damaged enough that his stance was off balance. But he was still standing, still holding three weapons, still capable of finishing this. Hajin struggled to his hands and knees, then to his feet. It took everything he had. His body was screaming at him to stay down, to give up, to accept that he had done enough. But something deeper, something fundamentally human, refused. He swayed but remained upright. Why? Velthor asked, and there was genuine confusion in his voice. Why do you continue? You cannot win. Your body is broken. You have fought with honor. You can yield. No one would think less of you. Hajin spat blood. Because I'm human. We don't know how to quit. The crowd was silent now, watching this impossible scene. The human should be dead. By every reasonable measure, he was finished. But he was still standing. Still defiant. Still refusing to accept defeat. In the human section, Mirai had tears streaming down her face. That's enough, she whispered. Hajin, that's enough. You proved everything you needed to prove. But Hajin couldn't hear her, could barely see anymore. His world had narrowed to the towering figure of Velthor, to the need to keep moving, to keep fighting. Not because he thought he could win, but because something in his DNA, carved by a million years of surviving against better predators, wouldn't let him stop. Velthor raised all four arms, weapons ready. He had tried to give the human an honorable end, a chance to yield. But if Hajin insisted on continuing, then Velthor would finish this. He would make it quick. It was the least he could do for such a brave opponent. I will remember you, Velthor said. Your name will be spoken with respect among my people. You have earned that. Hajin's response was barely a whisper. Not dead yet, Velthor charged. This would be the final exchange. He would bring all four weapons down simultaneously in his signature finishing move, the same strike that had ended his last three trials. No defense could stop it, no armor could withstand it. Four weapons, tons of force, perfect coordination. Hajin watched him come. Through blurred vision, through pain that was now just a constant roar in his mind, he watched. His body couldn't move like it had at the start of the fight. He couldn't dodge or block effectively anymore. He had one chance. One desperate, insane chance. He had been fighting Velthor's way because that's what the arena demanded. That's what the trial was supposed to be. Warriors meeting in honorable combat. But Hajin wasn't a warrior. He was a survivor. And survivors did whatever it took. As Velthor's four arms reached the top of their arc, weapons poised to strike down with lethal force, Hajin made his decision. Instead of retreating, instead of trying to defend, he did the last thing anyone expected. He charged forward, directly into the attack. Time seemed to slow. Velthor's compound eyes widened in shock. No one had ever charged into his finishing move. It was suicide. The human had finally broken from the damage and pain. He was throwing his life away, but Hajin wasn't attacking. He was dropping. His legs gave out, whether from injury or by design, and he fell forward into a slide. The bloody sand made it slick. His momentum carried him across the ground under those four descending arms, directly between Velthor's spread legs. The Vextar warrior's four weapons came down with tremendous force, hitting nothing but sand and stone. The miss threw him off balance, his damaged knee unable to compensate. And in that moment of vulnerability, as Velthor stood with his legs spread, his forearms extended downward, completely committed to the strike, Hajin acted. His arms, the same two arms that Velthor had mocked, shot upward from below and behind. His hands found Velthor's neck, wrapping around it from behind. Before the Vextar warrior could react, Hajin locked his grip, his arms crossing behind Velthor's head in a position the warrior's forearms couldn't reach. It was a rear naked choke, a submission hold developed by humans centuries ago. Simple, brutal, effective. And it exploited the one weakness in Velthor's design. His forearms were optimized for forward combat. They couldn't effectively reach directly behind and below his head. Velthor's forearms immediately dropped their weapons and reached backward, trying to grab Hajin. But the angle was wrong. His upper arms couldn't bend that way. His lower arms couldn't reach high enough. The forearms that had seemed like such an advantage were now just limbs flailing uselessly. No, Velthor growled, trying to spin, trying to throw Hajin off. But Hajin's legs were locked around the warrior's torso now, his body weight pulling backward. Every ounce of his remaining strength went into his arms, into maintaining that grip. It wasn't about strength anymore. It was about position, about leverage, about refusing to let go no matter what. Velthor slammed himself backward, crushing Hajin between his body and the ground. Fresh agony exploded through Hajin's already broken ribs. His vision went white, but his arms held. His grip remained. The crowd was in absolute chaos. This wasn't how trials ended. This wasn't honorable combat. This was something primal and savage. This was a human fighting to survive. Release me, Velthor roared, staggering forward. His forearms were still trying to reach Hajin, still failing. He spun, trying to throw the human off, but Hajin's legs were locked tight. He was holding on with the last reserves of human stubbornness. Velthor's movements became more desperate. He wasn't getting enough air. His forearms, so powerful and coordinated in combat, couldn't solve this problem. They couldn't reach the right angle. His exoskeleton, his natural armor, protected him from strikes but did nothing against a choke. This is not honorable, Velthor gasped, his voice weakening. Don't care, Hajin whispered, tightening his grip. Just care about winning. The Vextar warrior dropped to his knees. His forearms were still moving, still trying to reach behind, but the movements were slower now. Weaker. His body was screaming for oxygen that wasn't coming. Hajin held on. His body was broken. His mind was fading. But his arms remained locked. 2 arms, that's all it took. 2 human arms using leverage and position instead of strength, using adaptability instead of power, using every lesson humanity had learned from being the weaker species. Velthor's forearms began to drop. One by one, they fell to his sides. His massive body swayed. The crowd's noise reached a fever pitch, but Hajin couldn't hear it anymore. There was only the grip, only the need to hold on. The Vextar warrior fell forward, his face hitting the sand. His body went limp. Hajin held the choke for 3 more seconds, making sure, then released and rolled away. He tried to stand, but his body had nothing left. He collapsed onto his back, staring up at the arena ceiling, his chest heaving. The medical alarm was sounding. Teams rushed into the arena. The trial master descended, his wings spread wide in shock. The crowd was making sounds that the translators couldn't process. Everything from outrage to amazement to approval. Hajin's vision was darkening. He could see figures running toward him, could hear Mirai's voice screaming his name, could feel hands on him, medical scanners, urgency. Before everything went black, he managed to raise one arm. Just one. He held it up in victory, his hand clenched in a fist. 2 arms, that's all he needed. That's all humans ever needed. The last thing he heard before unconsciousness took him was the trial master's voice booming across the arena, translated into 100 languages, announcing the impossible. The human is victorious. Then darkness and the blessed absence of pain. But somewhere in that darkness, Hajin was smiling. Velthor had been right about one thing. Humans can't win without arms. Good thing Hajin's arms were so versatile. Good thing they could do more than just hold weapons. Good thing they could wrap around an opponent's neck and refuse to let go until the fight was won. The galaxy had learned something today. Humans might not be the strongest, might not be the toughest, might not have 4 arms or natural armor or any of the advantages that other species possessed, but humans were survivors. And survivors didn't fight fair. They fought to win. The fight entered its 20th minute, and Hajin was still alive. That alone was shocking the crowd. Most of Velthor's opponents didn't last 10 minutes. But here was this small human, bleeding and limping, still moving, still fighting. Hajin's entire body was a map of pain. His ribs grated with every breath. Blood ran from cuts on his arms, legs, and face. His left eye was starting to swell shut from a glancing blow, but his mind was sharper than ever, fueled by adrenaline and the desperate need to survive. He had stopped trying to match Velthor's strength. Instead, he focused on movement and positioning. When Velthor attacked with his upper arms, Hajin went low. When the lower arms struck, he went high or circled. He made Velthor turn, made him adjust, made him work, and slowly, bit by bit, the Vextar warrior was slowing down. Not much. His species didn't fatigue the way humans did, but Hajin could see it in the small things. Velthor's footwork was becoming less precise. His attacks were a fraction slower. The damaged knee joint was affecting his balance. The small wounds Hajin had inflicted were adding up. Hajin grabbed a rock the size of his fist and hurled it at Velthor's head. The warrior blocked it with a sword, but the distraction gave Hajin time to reposition. He was using everything now. The terrain, improvised weapons, anything that gave him an edge. There was no honor in it, but there was survival. Stand and fight, Velthor demanded, frustration clear in his voice. I am fighting, Hajin replied, breathing hard. Just not the way you want. They clashed again, and this time Hajin committed fully to the attack. He drove inside Velthor's reach where the long swords couldn't swing effectively. The mace came down, but Hajin rolled with the impact against his back, spreading the force. It hurt, God it hurt, but it didn't break him. He jammed his blade into the joint of Velthor's lower left arm, the one he had been targeting all fight. This time he felt something give. Not a complete disable, but the arm's movement became restricted. Velthor bellowed and backhanded Hajin with his upper right arm, sending him flying. Hajin hit the ground hard, rolled, and came up in a defensive crouch. His vision swam. Blood filled his mouth, but Velthor's lower left arm was hanging differently now. The curved blade dipped lower. That was one arm compromised. 3 to go. The crowd was roaring now, but the sound was different. There was excitement, uncertainty. Some were cheering for Velthor. Others were making sounds of approval at Hajin's resilience. The impossible was becoming merely improbable. In the human section, Mirai gripped the railing so hard her knuckles were white. Borum was running calculations on his tablet, tracking damage to both fighters. He's actually doing it, Borum whispered. He's finding the pattern, Velthor charged, and Hajin met the charge differently this time. Instead of retreating, he dropped to his knees and slid across the blood-slicked sand, going under the attack. As he passed beneath Velthor, he dragged his blade across the back of the warrior's damaged knee. Velthor roared and spun, but his knee buckled. He caught himself with his lower right arm staying upright. But for the first time in 17 trials, the undefeated champion had been forced to one knee. The arena went silent. Hajin struggled to his feet, swaying. Every part of him screamed to lie down, to stop, to give up. His body was failing, but his mind was clear. He could see the path now. Not to victory, not yet, but to possibility. You are persistent, Velthor said, rising back to his feet with visible effort. I did not expect this. Your species is stronger than I believed. We're stubborn, Hajin said. We don't know when to quit. Then I will teach you. Velthor's forearms tensed. No more patience. No more caution. I will end this now. The Vextar warrior exploded forward with renewed aggression. His 4 weapons became a whirlwind of death. Hajin's exhausted body couldn't keep up. A sword opened a deep cut across his chest. The mace caught his shoulder, and he heard something crack. The pain was beyond description. He fell, rolling with the impact, desperately trying to create space. Velthor pursued relentlessly. There was no more pattern, no more strategy. Just overwhelming fury and 4 weapons trying to end the fight. Hajin's blade flew from his hand, knocked away by a sword strike. One of his improvised staff pieces broke completely. He was down to nothing but his bare hands and a single piece of splintered wood. Velthor stood over him, all 4 weapons raised. You fought well, human. Better than any before you. But this is over. Hajin looked up at those 4 arms all poised to strike. His vision was blurring from blood loss and exhaustion. This was it. He was going to die here. At least he had made them work for it. At least he had shown the galaxy that humans didn't go quietly. Then his sister's voice echoed in his mind. Make him fight your way. And suddenly Hajin understood. He had been fighting Velthor's fight. Weapons against weapons. Strength against strength. But that wasn't human. Humans didn't fight like warriors. They fought like survivors. They adapted. They used every advantage, no matter how small. Velthor had 4 arms. That was his strength. But it was also his weakness. Because while those 4 arms could wield 4 weapons, they were still connected to one body, one center of balance, one core. Hajin's fighting style changed in an instant. He stopped trying to match weapons with weapons. Instead, he targeted the body. He swept at Velthor's damaged knee, not trying to hurt it, just throwing the warrior off balance. When Velthor stepped back to recover, Hajin didn't follow with an attack. He grabbed Velthor's lower left arm, the damaged one, and pulled. Velthor stumbled forward, surprised. His forearms windmilled, trying to keep balance while also trying to strike. But the movements interfered with each other. The upper left sword nearly hit the lower right arm. The mace swing went wide. Hajin used that moment of confusion to get behind Velthor. He jumped on the warrior's back, wrapping his legs around Velthor's torso. All four arms tried to reach him, but the angle was wrong. The swords couldn't swing backward effectively. The mace couldn't reach. The curved blade was in the damaged arm and moved too slowly. Velthor spun, trying to throw Hajin off. The human held on with desperate strength, his arms reaching around toward Velthor's neck. This wasn't elegant. This wasn't honorable. This was a human fighting the only way that mattered, to survive. The crowd was going insane. No one had ever fought like this. It was barbaric, crude, effective. Velthor slammed backward into a boulder, trying to crush Hajin. The impact drove the air from Hajin's lungs and sent fresh agony through his broken ribs. But he held on. Velthor's forearms were flailing now, trying to dislodge the human. But his forearmed advantage meant nothing if he couldn't bring those arms to bear. Hajin's position on his back, clinging close, was the one place those weapons couldn't easily reach. "Get off!" Velthor roared, spinning and slamming backward again. Hajin's grip was slipping. Blood made everything slick. His strength was almost gone, but he was closer to Velthor's neck now. Closer to the one target that mattered. If he could just reach it, if he could just hold on for a few more seconds. Velthor threw himself backward onto the ground, landing on top of Hajin with all his considerable weight. Something in Hajin's body broke. He couldn't tell what. Everything was pain now. But through the pain, through the blood and exhaustion and desperation, his arms were still reaching for Velthor's neck. The warrior tried to roll away, but Hajin's legs were locked around his torso. They rolled together across the sand, a tangle of limbs and weapons in desperation. 4 arms against 2, armor against flesh, experience against adaptability. And in that moment, as they struggled in the bloody sand, Hajin realized something. Velthor was panicking. For the first time in his career, the undefeated champion didn't know what to do. This wasn't how fights were supposed to go. This wasn't honorable or traditional or proper. This was human. Hajin's hands finally found what they were looking for. The gap in Velthor's armor. The vulnerable neck beneath. His fingers, slick with blood, began to tighten their grip. The arena was full. Hajin could hear the crowd before he even entered. A sound like rushing water mixed with mechanical grinding. Thousands of aliens from dozens of species, all gathered to watch what they expected would be a quick and brutal lesson in humility for humanity. He stood in the preparation chamber, checking his equipment one last time. The staff felt good in his hands, balanced and solid. The short blade was secured at his hip. He wore minimal armor, just enough to protect vital organs without restricting movement. Light, mobile, fast. That was the plan. Borum fussed over him, checking straps and fastenings. Remember his lower left arm. That's where we think the joint might be weakest. We saw him favor it slightly in his last fight. I remember, Hajin said. Mireille stood by the door, her expression calm but her hands clenched. You don't have to win. You just have to survive and make them respect us. Show them we're not easy prey. I'm going to win, Hajin said quietly. Mireille started to argue, then stopped. She saw something in his eyes. Not confidence exactly. More like determination that had gone beyond reason into something harder. Then win, she said simply. The door opened. The arena's light flooded in, bright and harsh. The crowd's noise hit him like a physical wave. Hajin walked forward, and the sound changed. Not louder, but different. Curious, anticipatory. They wanted to see what humanity's champion looked like up close. The arena was larger than it appeared in the footage. A circular space about 200 feet across with varied terrain. Flat sandy areas gave way to rocky sections. Boulders provided cover. One side had a slight elevation, maybe 10 feet higher than the rest. The ceiling was high enough that it wouldn't matter for the fight. Velthor was already there, standing in the center. He wore armor that looked ceremonial but was clearly functional, covering his torso but leaving his forearms free. Each arm held a weapon. 2 long swords in his upper arms, a mace in his lower right, a curved blade in his lower left. 4 weapons for 4 arms. Hajin walked toward him, and again the size difference struck him. Velthor was massive. Not just tall but broad, his body designed for war. His exoskeleton gleamed under the lights, purple and black, beautiful and deadly. They met in the center. The trial master, a bird-like creature with silver feathers, stood between them. His voice boomed across the arena, translated instantly into every language. Champions of your people, you stand here to settle a dispute through trial by combat. The rules are ancient and absolute. Fight until one yields, one dies, or one cannot continue. 3 hours maximum. Judges will decide if neither has fallen by then. Do you understand? I understand, Velthor said, his forearms moving in what might have been a formal gesture. I understand, Hajin replied. The trial master looked at each of them, then raised his wings. When I fly from the arena, you may begin. Warriors, honor your species. The bird-like creature's wings spread wide and he launched into the air, ascending to the observation deck. For a moment, there was perfect silence. Hajin and Velthor stood 10 feet apart, studying each other. You are brave, Velthor said. Foolish but brave. I will make this quick. Try your best, Hajin replied. A horn sounded. The trial began. Velthor moved first, closing the distance with surprising speed for something so large. His forearms came alive, weapons moving in a pattern that seemed impossible to track, high, low, middle, all at once. Hajin raised his staff and backpedaled, deflecting what he could, dodging the rest. The first exchange lasted 5 seconds. Hajin gave ground, putting distance between them. The crowd made sounds of approval. To them, this was going exactly as expected. The human was retreating. The Vextar was dominating. Velthor pressed forward, his forearmed assault relentless. Hajin kept moving, circling, using his footwork to maintain space. He blocked a sword strike with his staff, ducked under a mace swing, rolled away from the curved blade. His muscles were already burning. This pace wasn't sustainable. A sword got through his defense, slashing across his shoulder. Not deep, but enough to draw blood. The crowd roared. First blood to Velthor. Hajin gritted his teeth against the pain and kept moving. He was learning with every exchange. The pattern Borum had mentioned was there. Velthor's upper arms typically attacked high. His lower arms went low or middle. The left lower arm, the one with the curved blade, did move slightly slower, maybe 1/10 of a second. Barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. They clashed again. Metal rang against metal. Hajin's staff cracked but didn't break. He managed to land a counterstrike against Velthor's armor, but the staff just bounced off. Might as well have hit a wall. You cannot hurt me, Velthor said, advancing. Your weapons are too weak. Your arms are too weak, Hajin didn't waste breath replying. He was too focused on not dying. Another exchange, another retreat. A mace swing caught him in the ribs despite his armor. Something cracked. The pain was white-hot. He stumbled, and Velthor surged forward for the kill. Hajin dropped and rolled. The 4 weapons struck where he had been a second before, throwing up sand. He came up running, putting a boulder between them. His ribs screamed. Definitely cracked, maybe broken. Running will not save you, Velthor called. Face me with honor. Hajin used the boulder for cover, catching his breath. The first 2 minutes had gone badly. He was injured, bleeding, and hadn't landed a single effective hit. This wasn't working. He needed to change something. He reached down and grabbed a handful of sand. When Velthor came around the boulder, Hajin threw the sand directly at his compound eyes. It was a cheap move, dishonorable by any warrior's code. Velthor recoiled, his forearms coming up to protect his face. Hajin darted in close inside the reach of those long weapons and drove his staff into the joint of Velthor's lower left leg. Velthor roared, more in surprise than pain. His lower right arm swung the mace, forcing Hajin to duck and retreat. But when Velthor tried to pursue, his left leg buckled slightly. Just for a second. But Hajin saw it. The crowd's noise changed. Some were angry at the dishonorable tactic, but others were intrigued. The human had actually hurt the champion. Coward, Velthor growled, wiping at his eyes. You fight without honor. I fight to win, Hajin replied, circling again. His ribs hurt with every breath, but he felt something like hope now. He could hurt Velthor. Not easily, but it was possible. They engaged again, but this time Hajin was more aggressive. He still gave ground when he needed to, but he started mixing in attacks. Quick strikes at joints, at the spots where armor plates connected. Nothing did serious damage, but each hit made Velthor react, made him adjust. A sword strike opened a cut on Hajin's arm. A mace swing caught his leg and he felt something tear. Blood ran down his body. But he kept moving, kept adapting. He broke his staff in half during a block, and suddenly he had two shorter weapons. More options, more angles. Velthor was getting frustrated. This should have been over by now. The human should be dead or begging for mercy, but he kept getting up, kept moving, kept fighting in ways that felt wrong, throwing sand, targeting joints, rolling under attacks instead of blocking them properly. Hajin used the terrain, scrambling over rocks, using elevation changes, making Velthor work for every exchange. The Vextar warrior was stronger and had more weapons, but Hajin was faster, more mobile, and every minute that passed, Hajin learned more about his opponent. The pattern was becoming clearer. Velthor's four-armed style followed sequences: upper right sword high, lower left blade middle, lower right mace low, upper left sword middle. The pattern varied, but it was there. His body mechanics limited how his arms could move together. Four arms gave him more options, but in close quarters, they started interfering with each other. 10 minutes into the fight, Hajin was bleeding from multiple wounds and could barely breathe through his damaged ribs. But Velthor's left leg was now visibly bothering him, and there was a crack in his chest armor where Hajin had hammered the same spot 3 times. The crowd was no longer laughing. This wasn't the quick execution they expected. The human was losing, yes, but he was making the champion work for it, making him bleed for every inch. Hajin ducked under a wild swing and drove one of his broken staff pieces into Velthor's knee joint. The Vextar warrior stumbled, and for the first time there was something other than confidence in his movements. There was concern. Die, Velthor roared, bringing all 4 weapons down in a massive overhead strike. Hajin threw himself to the side. The weapons hit the ground where he had been, cracking the stone. He rolled to his feet and lunged in, going for Velthor's eyes with his blade. Velthor blocked with his upper left sword, but the move forced him to cross his arms awkwardly. For just a moment, his four-armed advantage became a hindrance. Hajin saw it, saw the opening in Velthor's defense, saw how his arms blocked each other when forced into certain positions, saw how his confidence was starting to crack. He smiled through bloody teeth. The crowd thought this was a mismatch. They were right, but not in the way they expected. The next morning arrived too quickly. Hajin woke with sore muscles and a mind full of combat scenarios, most of them ending with his death. He found Borum already awake in the medical bay, surrounded by holographic displays showing Vexitar biology. "Tell me something good," Hajin said, pouring himself coffee from the dispenser. The station's water recycling system made it taste metallic, but the caffeine was real enough. Borum looked up, his face tired but animated. "I've been studying their physiology all night. Want the good news or the bad news? Start with the bad. I'm already expecting it. Velthor's species has redundant organs. 2 hearts, 3 lungs, backup systems for almost everything. Their exoskeleton can withstand impacts that would pulverize human bones. Their pain receptors are significantly less sensitive than ours. And those forearms? Each one is stronger than both of yours combined." Borum pulled up a comparison chart. A human punch delivers maybe 700 pounds of force. Velthor's weakest arm can deliver over 3,000. Hajin sipped his coffee. "And the good news? Their joints, while stronger than ours, are still joints. They can be damaged. Their eyes, despite being compound, have blind spots. And most importantly, their brain chemistry is different. They don't produce adrenaline like we do. They don't get that fight-or-flight response. That temporary boost in strength and speed. So they're always at their maximum capability," Hajin said. "Right. Which means they can't push beyond their limits the way humans can. When we're desperate, our bodies can do things we normally couldn't. They can't." Borum highlighted several points on the anatomical display. Also, their four-armed configuration means their nervous system is more complex. More connections to process. In theory, that could mean slightly slower reaction times. In theory. Hajin studied the display. How much slower? Milliseconds, maybe. It's hard to measure, and it might not matter in actual combat. Borum looked apologetic. "I'm trying to find advantages, but honestly, Hajin, this is bad. Very bad. He outclasses you in almost every measurable way." Mirai entered the medical bay carrying a tablet. "The council approved your equipment request. You can have any non-technological weapons you want. I've had our fabricators working on options." She pulled up images of various weapons. Swords, spears, axes, hammers, staffs. "What do you want?" Hajin looked through the options. Each weapon had strengths and weaknesses. A sword could cut but might not penetrate Velthor's exoskeleton. A hammer could deliver blunt force but was slow. A spear had reach but could be broken. I need to test them, he said finally. All of them. The next several hours were spent in the training room. Hajin worked through each weapon, feeling its weight, testing its balance. Mirai and Borum watched, occasionally offering suggestions. The station's fabricators could create anything he wanted, but choosing the right tools was critical. The problem is, I don't know what will work until I actually fight him, Hajin said, breathing hard after practicing with a pair of short swords. His armor could deflect everything. Or maybe it has weak points. I won't know until I'm in there. Then prepare for multiple scenarios, Mirai suggested. Choose weapons that give you options. Hajin nodded. He selected a staff about 6 feet long, made from a flexible composite that wouldn't break easily. It could be used for defense, for striking, for creating distance. He also chose a short blade, something he could keep as a backup. Simple, practical. Not fancy but reliable. I'm not going to win by being stronger, Hajin said, more to himself than to the others. I need to be smarter, faster, more adaptable. You need to survive long enough to find his weakness, Mirai corrected. Don't try to win in the first minute. He'll be expecting that. Everyone charges at him trying to land a lucky hit. It never works. Hajin watched footage of Velthor's fights again. Mirai was right. Every opponent tried to overpower him, tried to match strength with strength. They all failed. The ones who lasted longest were the ones who played defensively at first, who tried to wear him down, but even they eventually fell to his relentless assault. He's patient, Hajin observed. He doesn't rush. He lets his opponents tire themselves out, then he finishes them. So you can't just run away either, Borum added. The arena has a time limit. 3 hours. If neither fighter is defeated by then, the judges decide the winner. And they'll choose whoever demonstrated more aggression and skill, which will be him. Hajin set down the staff. I need to damage him. Need to prove I'm actually a threat. But I can't afford to take too much damage myself. The weight of the task was crushing. Find a way to hurt an opponent who was stronger, tougher, and more experienced. Do it while avoiding his forearms and his superior reach. Last long enough to find a weakness that might not even exist. That evening, Hajin sat alone in his quarters staring at his hands. 2 hands, 2 arms. That's all he had. Velthor's mocking words echoed in his mind. Humans can't win without arms. The crowd had laughed. Even some of the human delegation had looked uncomfortable, knowing the truth in those words. Humanity had survived on Earth by creating weapons. Spears, bows, swords, guns, bombs. They took their weak, soft bodies and made tools to compensate. But in the arena, those tools were limited. He couldn't bring a gun, couldn't wear powered armor. He had to fight with primitive weapons against an opponent who was a weapon. A message came through on his communicator. It was from Earth, his family sending encouragement. His younger sister's message made him smile despite everything. Remember when you taught me to fight? You said the secret wasn't being the strongest. It was making the other person fight your way, not theirs. Make him fight your way, big brother. Hajin read the message 3 times. Make him fight your way. The advice was simple, but it cut through his doubt. He had been thinking about how to fight Velthor's fight, how to match his strength, counter his techniques, survive his assault. But that was wrong. He needed Velthor to fight a human's fight. Hajin pulled up footage of human martial arts, wrestling, boxing, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, Krav Maga. Each system developed by humans to fight other humans. But the principles were universal. Use leverage instead of strength. Target weak points. Control the distance. Make your opponent react instead of act. Velthor fought like a warrior, honorable, direct, powerful. He expected the same from his opponents. But humans didn't evolve as warriors. They evolved as survivors. They did whatever it took to live another day. The next morning, Hajin's training changed. Instead of practicing weapon techniques, he practiced movement, footwork, evasion, rolling, falling safely. He practiced fighting from his back, from his knees, from compromised positions. He practiced dirty tactics that would make a traditional warrior scoff. Eye strikes, groin attacks, biting. Nothing was off limits if it kept you alive. Mirai watched with growing understanding. You're not going to fight him like a warrior. I'm going to fight him like a human, Hajin replied. Humans don't fight fair. We fight to win, we adapt, we survive. Borum pulled up the arena schematics. The terrain varies. Flat sections, rocky areas, elevation changes, some obstacles for cover. Use all of it. Make him chase you. Tire him out. Won't the judges see that as cowardly? Hajin asked. Maybe, but you'll be alive. Mireille crossed her arms. Let them judge. Let the galaxy think we're cowards. As long as you win, nothing else matters. The final day before the trial arrived. News of the upcoming fight had spread across the galaxy. Millions of beings would be watching, some out of curiosity, most to see humanity put in its place. The broadcasts were already calling it a mismatch, a formality, an execution disguised as sport. Hajin tried not to think about that. He focused on his body, his weapons, his plan. He ate carefully, keeping his energy up without feeling heavy. He stretched, keeping his muscles loose. He reviewed everything he had learned about Velthor, looking for any detail he might have missed. That night, he slept surprisingly well. The fear was still there, living in his chest like a cold stone. But he had a plan now. It probably wouldn't work. The odds were still against him, but at least he wasn't going into the arena hoping for a miracle. He was going in with a strategy. When he woke on the morning of the trial, his first thought was simple and clear. Velthor had never lost because he had never faced an opponent who refused to play by his rules. Today that changed. Today Velthor would fight a human, and humans were very good at breaking rules. The orbital station hung in space like a massive jewel, its curved surfaces reflecting the light of 3 nearby stars. Inside the main arena, representatives from 40 different species gathered to witness what many believed would be humanity's humiliation. The air smelled of ozone and alien biochemistry, a mix that made Hajin's nose twitch as he stood in the observation deck. Mireille stood beside him, her dark eyes scanning the crowd below. She wore the formal uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, but her posture was that of a soldier. They're placing bets, she said quietly, 50-1 against us. Hajin nodded. He expected nothing less. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council only 3 years ago, and in that time, they had been treated like children at an adult's table. Weak, soft, dependent on their technology. The other species never said it directly, but the meaning was clear in every interaction. Commander Mireille of Earth. The voice boomed across the arena, translated into 100 languages simultaneously. The crowd fell silent. The Vextar Empire has issued a formal challenge for territorial rights to System 774. Do you accept trial by combat? Mireille's jaw tightened. System 774 contained rare elements that Earth desperately needed. Refusing the challenge would mean giving up those resources and appearing cowardly. Accepting meant sending someone to fight a Vextar warrior, and the Vextar had never lost a trial. Earth accepts, Mireille said, her voice steady and clear. The crowd erupted in clicks, whistles, and sounds that human ears couldn't properly process. In the center of the arena, a figure emerged from the Vextar delegation. Velthor stood 8 feet tall, his exoskeleton gleaming dark purple under the lights. 4 arms extended from his torso, each as thick as Hajin's leg. His head was angular and sharp, with compound eyes that could track multiple targets at once. Velthor raised all 4 arms in a gesture of dominance. The crowd roared approval. He was their champion, undefeated in 17 trials. He had crushed opponents from species far stronger than humans. I volunteer as Earth's champion, Hajin said, stepping forward before Mireille could stop him. She grabbed his arm. Hajin, you've seen the footage. He's killed 3 opponents, crippled 7 more. I know. Hajin looked at her calmly. But I'm the best fighter we have. You know it. I know it. And if we're going to lose, we should at least make them work for it. Mireille wanted to argue, but she couldn't. Hajin was right. At 28 years old, he had spent a decade in Earth's special forces, training in every combat system humanity had developed. If anyone had a chance, it was him. Even if that chance was almost 0. Champion of Earth, step forward, the announcer called. Hajin walked down the stairs to the arena floor. The crowd's noise changed in tone. He could hear what they were thinking without understanding their languages. Look at him. So small. Only 2 arms. This will be over quickly. He reached the center of the arena and stood opposite Velthor, Up close, the size difference was even more dramatic. Velthor looked down at him, his alien face unreadable but his body language clear. Contempt. You are the best your species can offer? Velthor's voice came through the translator, deep and resonant. I am, Hajin replied. Velthor's forearms moved in a complex gesture that the translator interpreted as laughter. He reached out with one of his lower arms and grabbed Hajin's right arm, lifting it up for the crowd to see. Then he displayed his own forearms, flexing each one in sequence. Humans can't win without arms, Velthor announced, and the crowd laughed with him. He was making a joke, playing with the double meaning. Arms as in weapons, arms as in limbs. You bring 2 arms to face 4. You bring soft flesh to face armor. You bring weakness to face strength. Velthor released Hajin's arm with a dismissive push. The trial will be in 2 days. I suggest you use that time to prepare your spirit for death. It will be swift. I am not cruel. The Vextar warrior turned and walked away, his forearms swinging confidently. The crowd was already celebrating his victory. To them, the trial was a formality. The outcome was decided. Hajin returned to the human quarters, where Mirai and Boram waited. Boram was their team's engineer and medic, a thin man with nervous hands and brilliant eyes. He had a medical scanner ready. Let me check you out, Boram said. Make sure you're in top condition. While Boram ran the scans, Mirai pulled up holographic displays showing footage from Velthor's previous trials. Hajin watched in silence. The Vextar fighting style was overwhelming. Velthor used his forearms in coordination, creating attacks from multiple angles simultaneously. He could wield 2 weapons while using his other 2 arms to block, grab, or strike. His exoskeleton could deflect blades and absorb impacts that would shatter human bones. He's never fought a human before, Boram offered weakly. Maybe that's an advantage. Or maybe he's never needed to, Mirai said. The species he's beaten are all stronger than us, faster than us, better armored than us. Hajin continued watching. In one trial, Velthor faced the opponent with thick fur and claws like knives. Velthor tore through the creature in under 3 minutes. In another, he fought a reptilian species with scales like metal plates. That fight lasted longer, but Velthor won by targeting the joints and eventually breaking his opponent's spine. What weapons can I use? Hajin asked. Mirai pulled up the rules. Nothing technological. No guns, no energy weapons, no powered armor. Melee weapons are allowed. Swords, spears, clubs, anything considered primitive by council standards. Basic armor is permitted. So we fight like ancient warriors, Hajin said. Except ancient warriors didn't face opponents with 4 arms and natural body armor, Boram added. Hajin studied the footage for hours, watching every movement, every pattern. Velthor was skilled, no question. But he fought with confidence bordering on arrogance. He expected to win. He always won. Late that night, Hajin stood alone in the training room holding a simple wooden staff. He practiced movements, strikes, blocks. His body knew what to do. He had trained for years in combat. But training against humans was different from fighting an alien designed for war. Mirai found him there in the early morning. You should be resting. Can't sleep. Hajin continued his practice. Mirai, tell me something. How did humans survive on Earth? We're not the strongest animals, not the fastest, not the biggest. Mirai considered the question. We adapted. We used tools. We worked together. We were stubborn enough to refuse to die. Exactly. Hajin stopped moving and looked at her. Every predator on Earth was better than us at something. But we're still here, they're not. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that Velthor has never fought someone like me. He's fought stronger opponents, tougher opponents. But has he ever fought someone who refuses to fight fair? Someone who adapts? Someone who survives not because they're strong, but because they're too stubborn to quit? Mirai smiled slightly. You're going to make him angry. That's the plan. Hajin resumed his practice. 2 days. I have 2 days to figure out how to beat someone who's never lost. Should be interesting. The station's artificial sun began to rise, filling the training room with light. Somewhere in the Vextar quarters, Velthor was probably resting, confident in his upcoming victory. He had no reason to worry. 4 arms against 2, armor against flesh, experience against hope. But Hajin had learned something from watching the footage. Velthor had never needed to adapt. He had never needed to change his strategy. He fought the same way every time because it always worked. That was both his strength and possibly his weakness. 2 days to find that weakness. 2 days to prepare for the impossible. Hajin rolled his shoulders and continued training. The odds were 50-1 against him. He had faced worse odds before. At least he told himself that. It helped him sleep when he finally collapsed from exhaustion.